Welcome to the Agile Wire. Brought to you by Wisconsin Agility. We want you to get agile and stay agile. Now here are your hosts, Jeff Bubolz and Chad Beier.
And we're recording. All right, Jeff, kick us off.
All right. We have Jurgen Appelo back on the podcast with us. Thank you for joining us again. So for those that maybe didn't listen to the last episode or like, oh, how do I know him? Jurgen created Management 3.0, had a lot, I don't know. That was probably the first part of your career, if I remember right. Like you spent a lot of time on that, and now has the UnFix model, which is it's a way for organizations to deliver value. That's more focused on customer value, and it kind of maybe solves some of the problems that people have with scaling their organizations today. So we're going to dive into that and some different topics around that. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah. All right. So let's just talk about, I don't know, probably the most popular, the most used agile scaling framework out there is SAFe, right? Scaled Agile Framework. What is
the data that I saw, it's 53% market share or something like that. So yeah, it's the biggie.
Yeah, it's the big one. Yeah. So tell our listeners, like, what's the difference between that and the UnFix model, and why should they care?
Well, first of all, SAFe is a framework. It's in the name. And the idea of a framework, according to the definition of a framework, is that it is a static structure that enables you to put things in and swap in and out while the rigidness of the framework remains, because it needs to keep everything together. That is a framework. That's the idea of a framework. So you need some things that are essential, that are mandatory. Otherwise, you cannot swap all the other things in and out. Mm-hmm. The UnFix model is not like that. It's not a framework because there is nothing mandatory. There's nothing that you must do. Everything is optional. So the metaphor that I use is the Lego box. There's not a single Lego piece that you must use. You have lots of options, and you can start building and playing. And the best description of that approach is a pattern library. Every pattern is a choice, is an option, and you combine and mix and match to your heart's content. So the approach is different. With a framework, you have something that you must have, and people must be trained in at least the framework part, because that part is essential. They literally call it essential SAFe, the smallest part of the Scaled Agile framework that you need to have. And the UnFix model is a pattern library.
So I think this you have me thinking already about something I think I read recently in one of your articles. You use an analogy of back to what you said, like picking the patterns, picking the things that you prefer to use instead of a one-size-fits-all approach. You use the example of, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciations on both of these, but La Creuset, which they make like really nice cast iron enameled cooking pots. I have one, I know. And then you also mentioned a knife manufacturer, which I'm not familiar with, but they were top of the line. They specialize in knives. And I think your point was when somebody who takes cooking seriously in their kitchen, they don't necessarily go for convenience, right? They don't go and buy the cheapest knife set that has everything, or they don't go to one store and buy one brand for their entire kitchen. A lot of times they'll mix and match really high quality pieces. And I think that you've mentioned that in reference to the UnFix model. Like there's a lot of great agile patterns, techniques, things to try that you don't necessarily feel the need to detail in the model. But back to the market share of SAFe, is that what makes it so popular? That it's convenience. You buy one big package, and I'm not arguing for one over the other necessarily, but just kind of as a thought experiment here. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do think that is alluring about SAFe's proposition for management and others. It seems to offer everything but the kitchen sink. It's all in there, whether it's DevOps or team topologies or design thinking or lean UX, you name it. Some people ridicule it for being like the Borg. You will
Yep.
be assimilated at some point by the Scaled Agile framework. Um, I don't think it is the point of a tool set to be everything to everyone. Actually, there's a famous quote that says, "If you try to do that, you end up being nothing to everyone." It's like this gigantic Swiss knife that is 1 meter long that has 150 different little tools on it, and it is completely unusable because of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So indeed, I use the analogy of the chef. The chef might find their favorite pots of indeed Le Creuset, which is a French brand, and maybe the favorite knives of Wasteful, which is a German brand, and they mix and match. They use different tool sets. So my intention with the UnFix model is not to be complete. In fact, I don't believe you can be complete. I think you should try to be good at what you're doing, to stake out a certain territory and say, here, I would like to be the best in this area. And we started with organization design. So how do we do organizational structure? Because I thought this was badly done in the existing Agile frameworks. So taking the pattern approach with a pattern library, we began with how can we offer people patterns that makes it easier for them to do organization design with structure. Doesn't mean that we stay limited to that with the tool set. Well, no, actually, we are extending now into other areas. But as I said to my team, we're only going to add things when we think we do better than others in this area. If not, we just refer to everyone else. Like there is no process patterns in the UnFix model for now. I happily refer to SAFe or Scrum or Kanban or whatever your favorite flavor, because we have nothing on offer that is better than what others are doing. So by all means, go shopping.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of we're pretty well versed in less large scale Scrum, and I've heard Craig and Boss say multiple times that as they're considering making changes to the less rules or the less guide, it's they're almost always looking to remove something versus add. Like they don't want to have it become a bloated framework. They want to keep it as lean and right. And the pun right is there for all of us to have a chuckle about, like less, right? Less is more, and it really is. And I think the UnFix model, I see the exact same similarities, right? It's stripped down to a point where it's minimal, like as minimal as you can get, and right on that edge of.
Well,
But
yes
yeah,
and
go ahead.
no. Yes and no, I would
Okay.
say. Actually, and that's the idea of a pattern language and using Lego as the metaphor. I actually really like that metaphor. Did you know there are nearly 4,000 different types of Lego bricks? Many
Okay.
people don't know that, but it's nearly 4,000. That's quite a lot.
Yeah.
So you cannot say that Lego is simple from the perspective of the catalog that they have of the options available for building. However, Lego is very simple in its use. I mean, a child of 3 can begin playing, but you don't offer them 4,000 different types of Lego blocks, of course, because then the learning curve is a bit too steep. We want to have the same approach with the UnFix model. So the way we bring things to people, and I fully admit we have a learning curve ourselves there, and we need to improve how we offer things. We want to offer things in a simple way. So not too many patterns at the same time. And
Mhm.
we discussed with the team, we probably need to offer different people different subsets. Like HR will need a different starting point than coaches and consultants, or marketing and sales, or DevOps, or whatever. They need their own entry point into the Lego box, you can say. But ultimately, the entire box needs to be large. because you need a lot of options in order to deal with the complexity of the world out there. There's actually a systems law that describes this, which is called the law of requisite variety. You need a requisite amount of variety or complexity to deal with the variety or complexity of the world outside. If you don't have enough pieces in your Lego box, you won't be able to build a dragon or a hospital or a tank, whatever it is you want. So same with the UnFix model. You will need some pieces, even though some may be rare and could only be used by 1 out of 1,000 people, doesn't matter. We're going to add them. So that doesn't make the catalog simple. And sometimes we have been accused of complicating things. Actually, I got a message this morning who said to me, the new roles, it's too fanciful. It's not essential. And I said, Lego has lots of fanciful Lego bricks that only few people want. But for a few people, they are very useful in a very specific context. So what we need to figure out is how are we going to present that stuff in a way that is manageable with people at the right level, with the right learning curve, etc. And that's a challenge for us as a team.
Yeah, when you think of Legos, like, you buy a box of Legos and you get one instruction set of like, here's the thing you can build, right? But like, with the same pieces, you could build something completely different. So kind of having those different construction sets is a valuable thing. And I think that maybe is one of the reasons why SAFe is so popular, is it's like, here's the whole thing and just follow this and put the pieces here and everybody has a spot. We don't have to worry about anything and just follow the directions. And it's easy. But if you have different options, then people are like, well, how do I know if I should do A or B or C or E or whatever, or a combination of those? And I think that's where people need help navigating that.
Yeah, and that honestly also makes it more difficult. It is the more difficult answer. The framework offers the easy way out. They say, this is the feature that we're going to install. And we're going to teach you with the certification how to implement this framework. People have been asking us how many organizations have already implemented the UnFix model. The question itself almost doesn't make sense. It's like, how many people have implemented Lego? I mean, which model are you talking about? I mean, the individual pieces, the patterns are used by millions of organizations. If you mean a very specific design with the pieces, nobody has done that. That's up to you to combine them. And that is the more difficult message, but also I think the more honest one, that there is work on the side of the managers and the coaches, consultants.
Yeah, I almost don't want to say Shuhari because it's so cliche, but it's an Agile podcast, so why don't we just throw it in there? It makes me think of, so years ago when SAFe was kind of hitting the market, I remember having a conversation with some colleagues, and my prediction, I don't know, Jeff, I don't know if it was you even that I said this to, but my prediction was that SAFe was going to basically sort of become the next waterfall, meaning like, a lot of companies were going to use it. They were going to find that it was change theater, as I've heard you use that phrase before, and nothing really changes. And then eventually they hopefully, maybe, if agility is important to them, they'll seek out something else. We've seen this play out now. Like we've had a long enough time frame, and I think many people in the community have. They've seen this play out. I'm not knocking the companies that have had great success with it. Great, you did something. You got success, whatever that means for you. But back to the Shuhari thing, I feel like if I'm just somebody who wants to whip together some meals in the kitchen, back to your analogy of cooking, I might want to just go to the local Target or, convenience store and just buy some cheap stuff and that I can cook with. Or maybe I'm just going to use the microwave, and that's good enough for me. But if I'm serious about making a really awesome meal, I might want to go spend the extra money or take the extra time to select certain things that are going to make maybe the cooking experience better. And I would argue probably ultimately the end product better too, the food, right? So I guess I feel like it takes a level of chef right? They're not at the shoe level probably. And this is probably why it's, again, maybe a harder, I don't know if sell is the right word, but just for somebody to comprehend to really make UnFix work amazing for them, it probably takes a little bit of a more than a beginner understanding, right? I mean, because we're talking about organizational structure and design here, which has everything to do with change, in my mind. So I don't know. Thoughts on that? Like,
Yep. I agree, and I don't want to be only negative about the Scaled Agile framework. I mean, some people make it their hobby to attack it almost every day. I sometimes join just for fun, but at least equally often, I try to talk about the good things
yep,
that frameworks try to do. I mean, they create awareness. They satisfy a need for some organizations. We can say the glass is half full, not half empty. So at least they get started, and then they figure out that they may need another approach, which might be the UnFix model that they could choose somewhere down the line. We'll see. And there are plenty of good ideas and good practices in there. It's just the framework concept that bothers me, the way it is all packaged and the way it is sold, and also the business model behind it. Because let's face it, Scaled Agile earns their money through workshops and certification. So they have this perverse incentive to make things as complicated as possible, because the more people find it hard to understand, the more workshops they can sell. There is no incentive to simplify things, as Wasteful and Craig Lyman has suggested, for less. And that's just one of the problems that I see. Another one that makes it very easy for managers, at least, to implement Scaled Agile framework is that there is this idea of the dual operating system that they borrowed from Kotter. Uh, so they say you don't have to change anything in the organization, just add this as an extra layer, as the network layer on top of things. And that's just horrible in my opinion, because you by default end up with a matrix organization with managers anywhere. They could be on your own team. Managers of people on one team could be on different sides of the organization, not even knowing each other. And there's plenty of documentation about the bad effects, the side effects of matrix organizations. I talked about that quite a few times, that they invariably lead to more centralized decision making, because the middle managers are unable to agree with each other on simple escalated issues, and then they just refer upward anything that they cannot resolve, because the middle managers don't know each other, so they don't trust each other, and then they refer stuff upwards. It's like they're like uncaught exceptions. We talked about programming briefly, Chad. I still know that concept from my old days. catching Catching the exceptions, and you don't want them to bubble up all the way and blow your architecture apart. And that's what happens with matrix organizations. So the UnFix model tries to prevent people from creating matrix structures. That makes it a bit more difficult. We default to network organizations. Yeah, that makes it a bit harder to implement, but also the best way,
yep,
in my opinion. That's the way forward. We want networks, not matrices.
yeah,
Yeah. In a matrix, it seems like, we just get to more and more control and we're trying to like push people in one direction. Where in the networks, it's like it's more natural. It's just the way we work in communities. It's the way that we work outside of work. When we're working, I don't know, think of different sports teams. I don't know. I'm just thinking of other networks that we're a part of where it's like everyone has their own team, but we were part of a bigger program or different other leagues or whatever it is. Like they all figure it out. They'll figure out how they're going to play or how they're going to work. And there's many different approaches. But when you give teams freedom, they can innovate inside of that. I think with the Matrix one, you steal all the freedom, or that's what often happens. And then people get very frustrated, right? Because they don't have control. They get disengaged. They're not very motivated. But the opposite of that is also true, right? Like if you're a startup and you're trying to do everything and you have no boundaries, then it can be chaos. So there's a sweet spot in the middle. And I think that's really what you're trying to solve here with the UnFix model, right? Is like, let's give just enough boundaries so that we all can have focus and we know where we're supposed to go. And,
Yeah.
we can deliver value to our customers.
Yes, before COVID, I traveled around Europe and spoke with quite a few of the scale-ups that we have here that we can be proud of in this part of the world. I mean, lots of famous companies are in Silicon Valley, but we have a few amazing businesses here. Think of Spotify and Wise and Zalando and others. Very, very big. And I talk with executives and coaches and so on. And what I noticed is that very often, particularly in the scale up years, you have these units with an executive team like a CEO, CTO, CIO, whatever, just three, four people, a product person or a marketing person, and the three or four of them, they manage the unit of 100, 150 people or something, and they don't really have managers, a middle management layer, because they were not big enough for that yet. And that was actually a good thing because everything was so flexible. People could reorganize like at the snap of a finger, depending on new opportunities or new risks, because you had no middle managers protecting their territories. And that's the problem that you end up with when you have middle managers protecting their teams or protecting their units. Then yeah, you lost your flexibility basically. So the idea with the UnFix model is that you only have what we call bases. Every base is a business unit, a tribe, whatever you want to call it. Micro enterprise, some people say. We call it the base because the place where people feel at home is a sense of belonging. It should satisfy Dunbar's number of max 150, more or less. And that is the autonomous unit. And there should not be middle management in there. So just one governance crew that manages everyone, whether it is 20 people or 120, and off they go, and they can be extremely fast and flexible. And then if you need more, then they should be next to each other. Then scale horizontally, just cut them like W.L. Gore did for a long time. They said to every unit, "Thou shalt not be bigger than 200" or something like that, and that worked very well for them. They just have to split for exactly the same reason, and that worked out well. So same idea, split horizontally, scale out, as we say, don't scale up. And that's the tendency of managers. Of course, they would love their unit to be bigger because that gives them status, because they have 1,000 people that they manage instead of 100. But that means when they scale up that they need to create layers in the middle. And yeah, we try to prevent that.
Yeah. I go ahead, Jeff. You look like you were gonna
Nope, you got
add some. No, so I love it, right? I love the idea that I guess the focus on the agility at the organizational level is what I'm most intrigued by. And that's with any, I think I've been known to say before as well, like organizations of the future they have to be agile at the org level. They need to be able to form and reform teams as needed to face what's ever in front of them. And I think back to the framework conversation we were coming from, when we plan change, right? And I guess back to the picking on other frameworks, it's not necessarily, as an organization, you can choose the decision makers, right? However you're structured, you can choose to do whatever you want. And you have to accept the consequences of that. Just like individuals in life, we make decisions, we deal with the consequences. What pains me, I guess, is to see companies in our area, companies around the world, make those decisions to pay for a large agile transformation with a big company, let's say, or go through this large, safe transformation, right? Anytime the word adoption or transformation is in the phrase, I usually am a little turned off by it, right? Because it implies that we're going, like there's this end state, and there isn't. What we really need is more like models to follow so we can really have true agility. And the reason I guess we pick on other things is it's kind of out of this empathy for the people involved. Like, one, it's painful for the people involved, and two, It is so expensive. Like the millions, if not tens of millions of dollars that just Jeff and I, as two people, have seen companies spend on transformations, adoptions, that a few years later, nothing's changed. It's they have to revert back. They're on to the next thing. So I don't know. Thoughts on either one of you, I guess. It pains me to see the amount of wasted money in our industry.
No, that doesn't pay me at all, to be honest. No, some people earn a good living with where with where the money goes, and those companies will die at some point. And well, goodbye, good riddance, as far as I'm concerned. Survival is an option. If you don't learn how to turn into a network, you sign your own death warrant, basically. And some companies do it pretty well, and others, well, hopefully they will learn for them. I have a good friend who said, "I want to help companies die," basically for exactly that reason. Creative destruction. Let's get rid of the dinosaurs. So no, I don't mind companies wasting their money if that quickens their way to the exit door.
It's an interesting way to look at it.
It allows new companies to emerge, and it opens the playing field for younger ones.
Yeah. I'm surprised by the slowness of the death of some of these companies though, because I will say, like, a lot of us have been saying that, like, well, they won't survive. And yet, maybe it's the industry they're in. I know a lot of insurance industry companies, they think they don't have a lot of money, but they have so much money that they can afford to be that wasteful, right? So
Yeah,
it's shocking how much money can get allocated to just,
yeah,
lost
that's true.
causes.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe I won't worry about it so much. Just help
I
companies
wouldn't.
die faster.
I would only worry if you are a consumer or a customer and forced to
Yeah.
deal with such organizations. Like
Yeah, there you
I
go.
have to deal with a credit card company. I will not name them. But just 2 years ago, I quit because I needed an overview of my transactions of the last year, and literally they told me to wait 24 hours for the PDF to become available. And I was like, what? I mean, does someone have to run physically into the cellar to generate the data? I mean, with every other bank, I can just download a CSV file on the spot. I mean, and import that in my bookkeeping pro. Why do I have to wait for a PDF? I mean, what am I going to do with a PDF? I just type all the transactions into into my other system. I have to use OCR to scan the text from the PDF. Why? Why do you give me PDF? I want the transactions, and not tomorrow after 24 hours. So yeah, that was a dinosaur, and I walked away. I mean, I have that power as a consumer, as a customer.
Yeah.
I said goodbye, good riddance. There are other banks and credit cards out there who do a better job. So that's what we need to do as powerful customers, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think about like the sources of innovation for some of these companies, right? Like, I mean, they all do you solve a problem, right? That's why an organization exists. Okay, so you do that thing. Like, how do you sell it? That could be one way that you could differentiate yourself, right? Like your business model, right? That could be one. Your product, like what your actual product does and how it functions, that could be one thing. But like how you build it is another source of innovation. And I think like so many organizations just take that as like, yeah, let's just do, I was part of organizations over here. They organize like this in this hierarchy with this matrix organization. Let's just do that. Like, it's just like, don't even think about it and like just plug and play what I've seen done in the past. But we're always thinking from a product standpoint, like how do we innovate? How do we find better ways? But we never think about that from an organization standpoint. And I think that is a huge source for innovation into the future for companies that aren't even thinking about that right now.
I agree. There are different ways of looking at how to yeah catch the next wave basically, and how to rethink from scratch. I like, for example, the things that Joe Justice has shared about his
Mhm.
experiences at Tesla,
Yeah.
where he says that at Tesla the factory is the product. That's how they look at it. It's not the cars that are the product. No, it's the factory pumping out the car. That is the product that they continuously improve. That's a completely different way of thinking once you consider that that is the complex system that they are growing, instead of creating a predictable, fast pipeline of output of cars.
Yeah.
So that's one example. Another is the whole change. Maybe we can talk about that from product to experience, which is one of my favorite topics. Actually, we made that step from project to product, with the Agile community, and some are still working on that. And I think the next step is moving to experience. I don't care about your product as a customer. I always say I care about my experience. What does it do for me, your product? And I have plenty times been disappointed with organizations that offer me touch points across multiple things that they offer, whether it is a website or a mobile app or a physical store or whatever, where individual products or services or whatever were agile enough, but the entire customer journey still sucked. And that means you have to step out of the product thinking and move towards what is the experience from a more holistic angle. What is it that the customer notices when traveling across everything we do as an organization? That also requires a different kind of thinking. We're not there yet with lots of things we're doing in the Agile community, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I like that. I like the shift in the topic. The experience makes me think of companies like, again, I have like pain in my heart when there's a product that I love so much, and I can't think of an example right now off the top of my head. But then the first time I have to interact with like customer service, it's such a terrible experience that I'm left with this dilemma. Like, do I walk away based on this experience? Or maybe it's a recurring experience, or is the product so good that I won't and I'll live with it, right? Now, if the product is mediocre and the customer experience is bad, then I'm probably already walking away, right? But there is so much to how, because the experience, the product usually solves a problem, right? The product or service usually solves a problem. Like some pain is relieved, some joy is brought, some solution is provided for your business, for your life. But if the experience around that, whether it's buying, selling, supporting it, is really bad, I feel like that's so much more emotional too than just the product solving the problem. And so I mean, obviously companies know this. We talk all the time about customer experience and the journey, and but I do think we don't use that word as much as we do product still today.
True. We have product backlogs, product owners, product managers, product roadmaps, and so on. Very few times do I hear the word experience. And what you mentioned is indeed one thing, that something could be a bad experience. Like 2 hours ago, again, and this is one of my pet peeves, I spent 10 minutes logging into several tools to dig into the admin side to fetch my invoices of several SaaS platforms, some of which I literally myself had to print as PDFs, which then I had to send to my accountant. Why don't they just email them to me? I mean, that saves me so much time. And I use dozens of these tools each month, and half of them send me the PDFs, and others let me dig for them myself. That's a bad experience. So that's an annoyance. But that's one thing. That is bad experiences with how products are offered. What we often forget is the psychology of experience. The Agile community often mistakenly thinks that delivering things faster and flawlessly makes for a better experience. Well, guess what? That's not true. There's actually science confirming that it is better to have a slightly imperfect product with great customer service, because if there is a problem with a product and you nail it with your customer service, helping the customer get over the issue, they appreciate you more after that than before the problem popped up. So interestingly, you want problems to to come up. You just need a very good customer service, dealing with those issues and helping customers along. And then they will love you for it because they had this personal interaction. And then the holistic angle is served because they had various touch points and they love the product more. And also, and that's another thing, just offering things faster and more often doesn't always mean that you have a better experience. Look at the entertainment industry. They're now switching back with streaming platforms from offering whole series in one go to offering individual episodes, as they did when I was young, when we were watching TV and we had to wait a whole week for the next episode of Knight Rider or the A Team or whatever it was that I was watching at the time. And that was exciting because it was anticipation that we were looking forward to that moment that the new episode would be there. And they're reclaiming that. And the actual reason is revenue, because of course they want to spread out the revenue of the subscriptions over a longer time. But the side effect, and I'm sure they think about that as well, is increased anticipation. We like looking forward to the next thing. And yeah, I wrote about that with an article about how Spotify has completely destroyed my music experience, tongue in cheek, because I can play any song instantly on Spotify, and I'm like, meh, whatever. I'm a big lover of ABBA. Well, they released a new album a year ago, and I still haven't listened to it because there's just so much. It's just overwhelming. Where do I even begin? And what I'm actually doing when I work on my music collection, I am digging into YouTube music to find some rare 12-inch um, uh, 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 songs or 12-inch recordings of 80s music that I never heard of before. And I'm like, another one. And that's experience too. A Spotify doesn't give me that in the same way. And then I don't care about everything that I can just play instantly. I want that experience of something that I find that is rare, that I can look forward to or whatever. We need to think about that part too, the psychology of what is it to consume a product or a service. It's not just giving everything that people ask for faster.
Yeah, I think that there's that we talked about networks a little earlier in the episode, but there's also a network effect to that, right? With the anticipation, you have conversations with your friends, your family about whatever it is, the product, and then that marketing kind of happens, and then there's more anticipation that builds, and then you don't want to miss out. So I feel like that's a really positive thing that if you just like, hey, here's everything, just have it, listen to the next thing, you move on. You don't even talk about it, you don't think about it, you don't appreciate it.
Right.
And
And
so
you devalue the product actually. You make it less valuable because the more there is, the less people value each individual thing. Like there's billions of songs there, and each of them has minute value to me. I like the long play albums that I have over there. These are my long play albums from when I was young. I value those more because I bought them. I had to cycle half an hour from my village to the city center and hope and pray that they were there, the things that I wanted to get. And then I found one like, oh wow, that's amazing. I have it. And that's experience. And we lost that by making everything available instantly.
Yeah, there is so much value to scarcity, right? Um, in all aspects, but
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
it's kind of that less is more again, right? And I feel the same way about Spotify. Like I try to convey to my children how amazing they have it, and they just can't, like just when you had to just wait and pay so much money for music, and now it's just like you literally like I shouldn't even say this out. Well, whatever. People could say this. Spotify will eventually raise their prices, but how great of a deal is it? like what you pay per month
I don't
to have access to so, and it's not a good deal for the artists, right? I mean, that's the sad part of it, but it's amazing how much music is at our fingertips. And again, back to the streaming, whether it's Netflix, HBO, Disney, like there's so much content that we're overwhelmed and you can hardly squeeze, you can't decide, right? There's just so much.
Yeah, yeah, no, you have it's a good point. The scarcity is where the value is, and this has shifted in products and services. That which is scarce is valuable, and because of the instant downloads of music and TV shows or whatever, the value of in each individual episode has become nearly
Yep.
nil. But other things are valuable, like um, artists now make lots of money with concerts. I mean,
Yep.
Mhm.
that is scarce. I mean, they can sell only a certain amount of seats. That means the scarcity is now there, not in the obtaining the song, which is anyone can do. So it has moved to another part of the experience, which is seeing that person or that band
Yep.
live.
And
So that also means that's the same in software development. We have when we get better or we have gotten better at delivering things faster and faster to the point where the software has become the value has become nil basically. So what else can we offer that people place value on? What part of the experience is rare and scarce that people are happy to pay for? And that is something that you need to think about.
yeah, I love it. I mean, I recently attended a concert where, and again, it's taking something away to make the experience more scarce. Combining our experience conversation earlier, a concert I went to, they lock your phone away at the beginning, and it was magical. Like it was what I remember as a kid going to concerts. Like there's no distractions. You're there. And it changed the entire concert. I've been to concerts since then where you still can have your phone out, and I'm so I almost don't even want to go to concerts anymore where phones are allowed because it's a terrible experience. And again, it's not that scarce because then who's going to record it, right? The next day you can go online and you'll see all these cell phone videos. Not that they're high quality audio, but it's just it is. I think the more you can take away from something from a product, right? Whether you have feature bloat, you've built way too many features. Uh, you've used the Borg reference. I don't know how many listeners caught the Borg reference earlier. That's Star Trek Next Generation, right?
Yeah.
And you've also worked in Knight Rider, A Team, ABBA. You've got
You
some
can
really
guess,
good. You got
you
some
can
really
guess how old I am.
yeah. You got some great references in here. You're speaking my language. But it, some of the frameworks, they're bloated. They're like the board. There's way too many options. And so you're overwhelmed. And then maybe you don't implement them very well. Maybe your experience isn't bad. So I guess maybe I'm shifting this into analogy and a plug for UnFix, but it there's not as much to it. And I think that makes it impactful, right? Because even the experience of trying to apply it in your organization, there's less things to choose from, right? I mean, I have a diagram of right now, like governance crew, partnership crew, facilitation crew, experience crew, capability crew. Like on one slide here, I can see most of it, which you can't in some other frameworks. You've got to click and drill down, and I know you can do the same here, but it's I think there really is. I like this conversation. You can tell when my voice gets loud, it means I'm getting excited about. But I love this conversation because it is. I love the idea of scarcity, amplifying scarcity, thinking about unique creative ways to use that to create better experiences for customers, and ultimately, I think that's better for the company. That's better business. It's going to impact your bottom line.
Well, and I love thinking about these things. So indeed, you mentioned the UnFix model and what we have available. A lot of it you can download for free. We offer cards for playing. The PDFs are available for free for the community. So there's literally zero value that we can charge for, and we need to think about, okay, what is it that is scarce that well people are happy to pay for. Well, an obvious one is My personal time, of course,
Yep.
that is scarce, but there's a limited supply of that, I'm afraid. But we can come up with other creative things. Like I discussed with the team a while ago. Why not every now and then publish a deck of cards that is like the Christmas edition or something like that, just for the
Mhm.
few people who like that kind of stuff. Or we can let them offer their own designs, and we print someone specific designs for the crew types cards or the human drives cards or whatever in a limited amount, so that you intentionally make something scarce, and then it's just a great experience for that person or a couple of people, and that they might be to pay for. This is one thought.
Yeah.
There are others, but yeah, scarcity is one thing, and but as I said, there are different angles on experience. It is also not making something perfect, because a slight blemish can actually make a product better, psychologically speaking, than a perfect product. And there's other parts of the human psyche that we need to understand as experience owners, and product owners don't really think about these things, at least
Mhm.
in my experience. They are taught that the Agile Manifesto says we should deliver things as fast as possible, because that was indeed the bad experience that customers at the time in 2001 had. They had to wait long for releases to the updates of their software. And then when one release happened, then next week there came a bug fix release on a separate CD, where it was extremely annoying. And yeah, that was a big problem to solve. That was the biggest frustration in the experience of customers at the time. But we fixed that. So there are other challenges from the customer's experience point of view.
Yeah, I can see someone sitting here listening to us being like, all right, I hear what you're saying, maybe some good points, but you've always said, Chad and Jeff, like we say this all the time, like we need to move from more of an analysis mindset to a feedback mindset. Like learn through doing and what people actually do, because you think you know what your customer will want or their experience, how their experience will be, but until you actually put them through it, you don't know, right? You don't know how they're going to behave. They behave in funny ways all the time. And so one thing we could do with the scarcity thing, like I still think this is a great thing. Like you could have a tier inside of your product that's like, hey, come be our beta user. We're going to release every week. You get all the new stuff first, but only 100 people get this. And you pay a certain premium for, or whatever the number is. Your product, your mileage will vary. But like that could be introducing scarcity with still learning to your customers. And what's going to work, and then getting feedback, and still not, overproducing features and things like that. So I think there's a way to combine all the stuff that we're talking about. What are your thoughts on that?
You're asking me
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
Chad?
What do you think? Yeah, what do you think? Either one, either one. What are your thoughts?
Chad, your
Like,
turn.
don't.
Yeah. So no, I'm all about it. I mean, like back to, we're all business owners, right? Um, Even in the product owner courses that Jeff and I teach, like we're always talking about this. Like, and I think the balance is to not make something gimmicky, not make it, not manufacture scarcity, which is, it's a fine line. But when you can find those opportunities, I think it does, back to the experience. It makes for a better customer experience. Like we're going to give you something, right? But we need something in return. And I think as long as the experience for both the creator of that value and the consumer of that value is there, I think that's a win-win. I mean, and I think that's what product owners, I agree. I think there's a lot of agile stuff out there where there's some confused product owners. There's very poor implementations of pick your thing, Scrum, Kanban. But I also know there are a lot of solid thinkers in that space as well, and product owners really nailing it, right? So I think, like we talk about in our courses, it's all on a spectrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a lot of painful implementations out there that prevent that. But I don't know. I like the idea of this, any unique way to create scarcity that's not manipulative. That's maybe how I sleep at night.
And as I said, it's not only scarcity. I offer 24 human drives as part of the UnFix model as the thinking tool to reflect on what is important for customers from their experience. And I think for learning, I don't look at the Agile community anymore. I look at the jobs to be done community. I look at service design and design thinking and human-centered design and so on, because they know what we are talking about. They dig this. And I actually had to rewrite the standard definition of value stream that we continuously use in the Agile community, because the standard definition says that the value stream is this process from a request of a customer delivering value. Well, it already starts wrong there. There shouldn't be a request. You should observe a signal, the signal that there's something for you to do, an opportunity to deliver value. You're not going to wait for someone's request, because then you might already be too late. The design thinkers and practitioners in jobs to be done movement, they don't wait for requests. They look what is the context in which a customer has a problem or which there is an opportunity. How can you detect this? What is the signal, and what then is your response, so that you can move in and offer your value. They might not even have realized that they have a problem. They might not even ask it. So why are we even talking about requests? And why are we talking about delivery only? Because that's the standard definitions of value stream, talk about delivery. Um, there's plenty of discovery to do. Which signal is the best one? What is the problem? What kind of solution, and so on. And again, design thinkers and so on are quite skilled in that area.
Yeah.
And we're just catching on, as far as I'm concerned, in the Agile community, because the focus has been, for good reasons, relentlessly on delivering software based on customers who came in with a problem and requested a solution to their problem. Yes, that's where we came from. But if we want to do better, if indeed we want to reinvent how we make things, then we have to get rid of that standard definition and move on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Like think about like where we came from. I'm just going to pull on that thread just a little bit. Like it used to be take something that was like a manual paper process, whatever, we're doing something, and let's just make it digital. And that'll just make it more effective, because look at, we have reporting, we have auditing, we can move data around, we can do all these other really cool things, just because we made it digital. And now it's like, that's easy. Everything's digital. Like now what's going to provide better experience for everybody is really a better conversation. And so just living in that, like, we're just gonna make everything digital, like that's just so status quo, I guess. I don't know. Like, so just that's just what everything is. So I don't know, how do we move past that? That'd be a good question for people to reflect on. All right. I don't know. We've been recording for a while here. So I think maybe just pivoting to one quick thing. Like I'm sitting here thinking, I'm a listener, I'm looking at this conversation, I'm like, all right, you got me really interested here. You're gonna this UnFix model. And but I don't know where to start. Like, how do I get going with this? Like, what do you recommend that I look into first?
Unfix.com is a good starting point. I think we're actually starting on a complete rebuild of the website, so things will look different a couple of weeks, couple of months down the line. But yeah, some patterns are obvious. The base, the value stream crew, the governance crew. I think many people will quickly end up with these patterns as a starting point. That's why they're also by default in the start, the default picture at the starting point. But there's a lot of other stuff. We just released yesterday the MVP version of common roles, for example. So what we did with our team is we looked at the Spotify model and Scrum and Holacracy and others, because they all have different suggestions for what are roles. And if we added all the suggestions together, plus a number that we came up with ourselves from our own experience, we ended up with 16 different roles. So, all right, that's 16 Lego blocks that we can add to the box. Most people will not use all 16. Actually, some people might not use any of them, and that's perfectly fine. Everything is optional. But having this larger palette at least allows you the opportunity to have a discussion with people and think, okay, which of these makes sense on our team? Do we need an envoy? That is the what they call the rep link in holacracy, which I find a horrible term. That's the representative of or the ambassador of one team representing one person representing a team on another team. That's an interesting practice that creates a link between those teams. So it's a good suggestion. I just don't like the name rep link. Who wants to be a rep link? So we call that the envoy pattern. Spotify model came up with the system owner. If you have everyone touching everything, which you have with collective code ownership, you might get the tragedy of the commons situation and a vicious circle of things running down. If not everyone practices the Boy Scout rule of leave things a little bit tidier than how you found it. So someone, this is a good suggestion, someone should monitor the Boy Scout rule that it is being applied in a certain area, and you call that person a system owner. Well, we turn that into the custodian pattern, someone who is the caretaker of a certain area and make sure that nobody screws things up. Everyone can touch it, but don't leave a mess. I will be watching you. And that's also a good pattern, but there are 14 others that we found. I leave it up to you to dig in, because we have quite a few other sets of patterns, and more will appear. I don't know, maybe in 50 years time we will have 4,000 just like Lego. Who knows? But most of them will be quite exotic. I'm pretty sure. We have only 100 or so right now, and that's a good start.
Yeah, another day and another podcast, but maybe there's an opportunity for AI to help with implementation of things like this, right? Like,
actually,
here's my problems.
Yeah,
tell me which patterns to use.
Indeed, that is on my mind. So thank you for saying that, Chad. That is my ideal, that we have patterns and we have described this one goes well with that one. If you have this one, I recommend not using that one. If we have that input, hopefully from the community, because we cannot make all this up. But it would be great to have those suggestions from the community. Then at some point, an AI would be able to say, well, if you prompt it with this is the kind of problem we need to solve with this number of people, and this is the kind of people that I have, what way of working do you suggest? What would be the organizational structure that you have in mind? And what are the processes that you think we should try out? And then it would dig into the UnFix model, I hope, and offer you the patterns that make sense in that context. That would be awesome.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. Jeff, you're better at wrapping up than I am.
Yeah. So, check Jurgen's work out at the unfixmodel.com. His books.
Unfix.com.
Unfix.com, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
And his books, Management 3.0. You can also just look them up on on Amazon. Look up for all his stuff. We'll put some links in the show notes, so check those out. And thanks for the time today.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Chad. It was a pleasure.
If you found value in today's episode, share this with a friend. Until next time, get agile and stay agile.